My wealthy grandson showed up one afternoon and asked, "Is the $8,000 I've been sending helping you out, Nana?" I forced a faint smile. "Sweetheart, I've been having to choose between my medicine and eating." His face drained of all color. By the next day, we learned the truth about my daughter-in-law. I'm glad you're here to hear this. Follow my story to the very end, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far my words travel. I sat at my little kitchen table, my fingers trembling as I counted the pills in the orange bottle for the third time that day. 7 left. 7 lifelines between me and the crushing chest pain that had been haunting me for months. The label seemed to mock me with its neat, cheerful font, "Refill by March 15th. But it was already March 20th. At 67, I never imagined I'd be stuck in this tiny, dim apartment, torn between paying for my heart medication and buying groceries. My Social Security check barely covered rent, leaving scraps for everything else. I'd let pride keep me from reaching out to anyone, but pride doesn't put food on the table or stop your heart from pounding out of your chest. I set the pill bottle beside an envelope screaming "Final Notice" in bold red print. The power company didn't care about my age, my income, or my dignity. They wanted their payment, and I didn't have it. A sudden knock made me jump so hard I nearly spilled my lukewarm tea. Through the peephole, I recognized a silhouette that made my heart stutter for a completely different reason. Landon. My grandson. 28 years old, successful, polished, and someone I hadn't seen in person in almost half a year. "Nana Claire." His voice carried that same warmth I'd adored since he was a gap-toothed 5-year-old covered in sandbox dirt. Now he stood at my door in a tailored suit worth more than my monthly income, dark hair neatly styled, exuding the kind of confidence that comes from never having to wonder whether you can afford both dinner and medicine in the same week. "Landon, sweetheart." I smoothed the front of my worn cardigan and tried to hide the exhaustion clinging to me. What a lovely surprise. He hugged me, smelling of expensive cologne and success. For a fleeting moment, I let myself pretend everything was fine, that I wasn't barely scraping by, that he couldn't feel through my loose sweater how much weight I'd lost. "I was nearby for a meeting," he said, "and I thought I'd drop in." His sharp blue eyes studied me with concern. "You look tired, Nana." I waved him off and motioned toward the small living room. "Just getting older. Sit down, I'll make some tea. I think I have cookies somewhere." But as I stepped toward the kitchen, Landon's gaze caught on the row of pill bottles lined up like tiny plastic soldiers on the counter. His expression shifted, the polished businessman mask slipping. "Nana, are you taking care of yourself? That's a lot of medication." I felt my face warm. "The doctor says they're necessary. Getting old isn't for the faint of heart." He sank into my threadbare couch, looking around as though truly seeing my home for the first time, the faded furniture I'd had for decades, the refrigerator humming in its emptiness, the stack of unpaid bills half hidden behind a decorative bowl. "The $8,000 I've been sending every month," he began slowly, "it's covering all this, right? Your medicine, bills, everything you need?" His words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I gripped the back of a chair, my legs unsteady. "What?" $8,000, he repeated, his face now pale as paper. "The money I've been sending to Serena every month for your care. She told me you needed help with medical costs, food, utilities. She's been managing it for almost 2 years." The room tilted. 2 years. For 2 years, I'd been skipping meals, rationing medicine, shivering in my own home, all while believing no one cared. "Landon," my voice cracked. "I haven't seen a dime of that money." The silence that followed was like a void. I watched his expression shift from confusion to realization, and then to a kind of fury I'd never seen in him. His fists tightened on his knees. "She told me you didn't want money directly from me," he said in a hollow voice. "Said you'd feel better if it came through her, that she was making sure you were comfortable." I sank into my chair as the betrayal pressed down on me like a weight. Serena, my daughter-in-law, the same woman who called me every couple of weeks with cheerful small talk, who occasionally visited with store-bought pastries and sympathetic smiles about how hard it must be living on a fixed income. She comes by sometimes, I murmured. Brings little things, asks how I'm coping. Always so concerned. Landon stood abruptly and paced to the window. His reflection in the glass was that of a man wrestling with a truth too ugly to bear. Nana, I've been sending her $8,000 every single month. That's $64,000 in just the past 8 months. She claimed it was barely enough to keep you afloat, that your health was failing, and she was doing all she could to help. He turned, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. What has she done? The question hung between us, sharp and dangerous. I thought of every time Serena had told me Landon was too swamped with work to visit. Every sigh about rising costs when I'd mentioned struggling. Every warm, pitying hand pat she'd given while letting me think I'd been forgotten. She hadn't just taken money, she'd stolen my dignity, my connection to my grandson, my sense of worth. I've had to choose between eating and taking my heart pills, I whispered, the words scraping my throat. I've been wearing my coat indoors because I can't afford the heat. Landon's composure broke. He pressed his palms to his eyes, shoulders shaking. I thought I was taking care of you, he said. Serena sent me photos of groceries she claimed were yours, receipts for prescriptions she said she'd picked up. She made me believe you were safe. The cruelty of it hollowed me out. She's been fooling us both, I whispered, the realization sinking into my bones. Landon lowered his hands and straightened, his grief hardening into resolve. This ends today, he said firmly. You're getting every cent that belongs to you, and Serena is going to answer for what she's done. But as relief bloomed in me, a colder thought coiled in my chest. If she had been this calculating for 2 years, what else had she hidden? What other lies had she told? As Landon pulled out his phone to start making calls, my gaze drifted to my reflection in the darkened window. I looked exactly like what I had become, a forgotten old woman, left to scrape by on my own. But when I caught my reflection in the window that night, something in my eyes was different. The resignation was gone. In its place was resolve. Serena had misjudged me. She saw an elderly woman and assumed I was powerless, voiceless, easy to discard. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, Landon showed up at my apartment. He carried a leather briefcase, shadows under his eyes, and the grim expression of someone who had spent the night uncovering truths too ugly to ignore. He called earlier, voice tight with barely restrained anger, telling me to gather anything, bills, bank statements, overdue notices, anything that might help us see just how deep Serena's deception ran. Now my tiny kitchen table looked like an evidence board. Piles of past due utility bills, stacks of medical invoices stamped payment required, bank statements that never rose above double digits. My entire financial life laid bare, a 2-year paper trail of quiet desperation. I've been on the phone with the bank since 6 this morning, Landon said, dropping into the chair across from me. He pulled a thick folder from his briefcase. Every transfer. Every receipt she ever showed me. Every lie she fed us, it's all here. His hand trembled slightly as he spread the papers across the table. I could see the fury in the tight set of his jaw each time he said her name. Look at this. He tapped one document, a bank transfer from 8 months ago. $8,000 sent to an account Serena swore was created specifically for your care. She even called it the Claire Wellness Fund. She gave me official-looking paperwork, complete with account and routing numbers. I leaned in, scanning the figures that represented help I desperately needed but never received. So, where did it actually go? Landon's eyes hardened. Straight into her personal checking account. Every last cent. He flipped page after page, his voice cooling into something sharp. A few days after each deposit, she moved the money around, paying off credit cards for high-end purchases, transferring to a hidden savings account my father didn't even know she had. That last part hit me like another blow. Serena hadn't just stolen from me. She'd been stealing from her husband's family, deceiving her own stepson, twisting the trust of the people who should have been able to rely on her most. There's more, Landon continued, unlocking his phone. These are her text messages to me over the last year. He scrolled, his face grim. Here's one from last Christmas. Claire is doing so much better thanks to your generosity. She refilled all her prescriptions and even bought herself a lovely winter coat. She's too proud to thank you directly, but she's grateful. The words hit me like a punch. Last Christmas, I'd sat alone in my fraying robe. My only winter coat had fallen apart weeks earlier. I'd heated a can of soup on the stove because I couldn't afford a proper holiday meal. Landon's voice turned even flatter. And this one from February, had to take Claire to the doctor today. Her heart condition is worrying, but thankfully we can afford the specialists now. She keeps saying she doesn't know what she'd do without family. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the uneven flutter that had worsened in the cold months when I'd been skipping doses. I haven't seen a specialist in over a year, I said quietly. I've been getting my prescriptions from the walk-in clinic because I can't pay for a cardiologist. Landon set down his phone and reached across the table, taking my icy hand in his warm one. Nana, she built an entire false reality. She made me believe you weren't just okay, but thriving because of the money I was sending. My mind raced back over Serena's visits these past 2 years. The little gifts she'd bring, a tin of tea, a magazine, a small plant, offered like grand gestures. The way she'd ask questions about my health, tapping notes into her phone as if she were tracking my medical care. She documented everything, I murmured, the realization clicking into place. Landon nodded grimly. Exactly. She took photos of your apartment, of you wearing those sweaters she bought, of your medicine lined up neatly. She sent them to me as proof she was managing your needs. I remembered those photos now. Once, I'd thought they were sentimental. But they weren't keepsakes. They were props in a performance. Evidence to support her role as the devoted, selfless daughter-in-law. She told me you were too proud to accept money from me directly, Landon said, anger sharpening his voice. That if it came through her, it would feel like family helping family. She made herself the hero in your story. She made me think she was sacrificing her time and energy for you. The manipulation was staggering. Serena hadn't only stolen my money, she'd stolen my relationship with my grandson, my sense that I mattered, the hope that family still meant something. When I called her last night, Landon said, lowering his voice, do you know what she said? She asked if you'd been making up stories again. She suggested maybe your memory was failing, that you were confused about the money. A cold shiver worked its way down my spine. Even caught, she was still spinning lies, still trying to make me the problem. She's been planting that seed for a while, I realized, my voice tight. All those times she pointed out little things I forgot, all those corrections when I got dates or details wrong, she was setting the stage to discredit me. Landon's jaw clenched. She's more calculating than we thought. But she made one fatal mistake, she underestimated how much I love you. After seeing your situation yesterday, there's nothing she could say that would make me doubt you now. Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't from sadness anymore. They were tears of relief, of finally being believed after years of subtle gaslighting I hadn't even recognized. What happens now? I asked. Landon's expression shifted, the soft concern replaced by a steel-cold determination I'd never seen in him before. It reminded me that he wasn't just my loving grandson. He was a sharp, successful man who made a career out of reading people and dismantling their lies. Now we collect proof, Landon said firmly. All of it. Every lie, every trick, every stolen cent. And then, we make sure she pays for what she's done to you. Hope began to stir in my chest for the first time in months, but a darker thought clung to me. If Serena had been this deliberate with the money, what else had she twisted? What other harm had she done without us realizing? Almost as if he'd heard my thoughts, Landon's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face. Without a word, he handed it to me. It was a message from Serena. Claire called me this morning sounding very confused, asking about money that doesn't exist. I'm concerned her condition might be worsening. Maybe we should think about assisted living. The sheer gall of it knocked the breath from my lungs. Even caught red-handed, she was still trying to spin her story, still framing me as the problem to be handled. But this time, I wasn't alone. This time, someone saw her for what she truly was. She doesn't know what's coming, Landon said quietly, his voice carrying a promise that sent a chill of anticipation down my spine. No, she didn't. And I was going to save her watching her perfect little world collapse. At exactly 2 p.m., she arrived, right on schedule, with a bouquet of cheap grocery store flowers and that carefully cultivated look of concern she'd worn for the past 2 years. I watched through the peephole as she used her phone screen as a mirror, smoothing her honey blonde hair before knocking in her signature soft rhythm. Landon was hidden in my bedroom, phone recording, under strict instructions to keep silent no matter what he heard. This confrontation had to feel natural to Serena. She needed to reveal herself on her own, and we needed every word caught on tape. Nana Claire, she said in that syrupy tone, pressing the flowers into my hands before leaning in for her customary air kiss. How are you feeling today? You seemed so mixed up on the phone yesterday. There it was, right away, the gaslighting. The subtle suggestion that my mind was the problem. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and perched in my faded armchair like it belonged to her. I brought you chamomile tea, she went on, pulling a box from her oversized purse. I know how you get when you're worried. Sometimes our minds play tricks on us when we're under financial stress, don't they? I forced my voice to stay calm, playing the part she expected, the frail, slightly confused grandmother. I suppose that's true, though I could have sworn Landon mentioned something about money he's been sending. Her smile wavered for a heartbeat, then returned. Oh, he's such a sweet boy. Always thinking about family. But you know how busy he is. Sometimes he feels guilty he can't be around more, so maybe he imagines doing more than he really can. The casual way she rewrote reality was stunning. She was sitting in my living room, surrounded by the proof of my struggles, and still managing to make my grandson's generosity sound like fantasy. He seemed quite certain about sending it, through you, I pressed gently. This time, her mask slipped a little. Her manicured nails tapped against the clasp of her purse. Claire, darling. I think you might be mixing things up. You know how memory gets at our age. She was barely 42, but said it like we were peers. Sometimes we just want something to be true so badly, we convince ourselves it is. I sat across from her, studying every inch of this woman who had spent years dismantling my life behind a mask of care. Maybe you could call Landon and ask him, I suggested lightly. Just to clear it up. For the first time, genuine alarm flickered in her eyes. Oh, I don't think we should bother him at work. His job is so demanding. Besides, I just spoke to him, he's really worried about your confusion. She scrolled on her phone and turned the screen toward me. See? He texted me this morning about you. I saw it instantly, the conversation was one-sided. Only her messages, no replies from Landon. She was manufacturing evidence right in front of me. I told him I'd check in today, she added, thumbs moving over the screen. I'll let him know you seem more disoriented than usual. Maybe it's time to think about some extra care. The threat was thinly veiled, but it was there, keep pushing her, and she'd push me toward a facility where I'd have no say in my own life. You're very thoughtful, I said with careful softness. It must be hard taking care of an old woman like me. Her expression melted into that fake warmth again. It is a challenge, but that's what family does. We take care of each other. Of course, it's been a huge financial strain. My heart froze. She was really going to keep this lie going, even now. A financial strain? I prompted. Well, yes. Your medical bills, groceries, utilities. It's not easy for a young family to support an elderly relative, especially with your growing needs. She let out a dramatic sigh. We've stretched ourselves thin to keep you comfortable. I stared at her, amazed at her audacity. How much would you say you spend on me each month? I asked, curious to see her commit to a number. She hesitated, calculating. Oh, it depends. Some months 6,000 or 7,000, especially when you've had emergencies. We just want to make sure you never worry about money. 6,000 or 7,000, just shy of the exact amount Landon had been sending her. That's very generous, I said evenly, though I don't recall any recent emergencies. Her smile tightened. Well, that's the concern, Claire. You've been forgetting quite a bit lately. Just last month when I took you to the cardiologist, you were so disoriented afterward. I hadn't seen a cardiologist in over a year. She was inventing entire appointments now. I wish I could remember that, I said. What did the doctor say? She shifted in her seat, suddenly less certain. The details aren't important, sweetheart. What matters is that we're monitoring your condition and that the doctor is pleased we can afford proper care. She was improvising, vague enough to cover the fact it never happened, but still keeping her central fiction intact, that she was the one ensuring my well-being. I'm so grateful, I said in a deliberately frail voice. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her face brightened. That's what I told Landon, you're so dependent on our care. It would be devastating if anything disrupted that. Another subtle threat. Of course, she continued in a conspiratorial tone, I do worry what might happen if Landon's business hits a rough patch. You never know how long success will last. My stomach tightened. She was already laying the groundwork for the day the money might stop coming, just another preemptive lie. She was always thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead, plotting how to protect her story no matter what happened. So, Landon's business isn't stable? I asked carefully. Oh, not unstable, she replied smoothly, but it's competitive. High pressure. These young entrepreneurs, they burn out faster than they think. I just want to be sure we have fallback plans for your care in case his finances take a turn. It hit me then, she wasn't just defending herself. She was planting doubt about Landon's reliability, positioning herself as the constant, dependable caregiver while making him the unpredictable risk. If her theft was ever questioned, she could simply claim his business troubles explained the missing money. Her manipulation wasn't sloppy or impulsive, it was intricate. Serena wasn't just stealing cash, she was weaving an entire false world where she was the only trustworthy one and everyone else was unreliable. You think of everything, I said, my voice mild, though I meant it in a way she'd never understand. She smiled faintly, clearly pleased with herself, and rose from the chair. I should go start dinner prep, but I'll text Landon about our chat today. He'll want to know how you're doing. Which, of course, meant she'd be reporting back with her version of events, adding more fuel to her manufactured evidence that my mental state was failing. Thank you for the flowers, I said as she gathered her bag, and for everything else you do. Of course, dear. That's what family does. Her hand lingered on the doorknob. And try not to think too much about money matters, okay? Dwelling on finances can make confusion worse. Just focus on staying comfortable and let us handle the tricky stuff. The moment she left, I stayed in my chair, letting the full scope of her performance settle over me. She hadn't just maintained her lies today, she'd fortified them, adding new fabrications and subtle threats with each sentence. Landon emerged from the bedroom, pale with rage. Did you get all of that? I asked. Every word, he said, holding up his phone. Fake medical visits. Non-existent financial support. Threats about your mental capacity if you don't go along. She's not just a thief, Nana. She's a predator. I nodded, strangely calm. She's been doing this so long it's second nature. She probably believes her own lies now. Not for much longer, Landon said, his voice hard. We've got everything we need to bring her down. As I watched him scrolling through the recording, labeling each lie for later use, a strange satisfaction settled in my chest, the satisfaction of being proven right. Serena had exposed herself completely, and she had no idea she'd just walked into a trap. The confrontation might have ended, but the real reckoning was about to begin. 3 days later, Landon returned. In his hands was a thick manila folder, and on his face, an expression that told me our investigation had uncovered something far darker than just stolen money. He placed the folder on my table like it was evidence from a criminal trial. Nana, he said quietly, sit down for this. What we found, it goes deeper than either of us thought. I eased into my chair, bracing myself. For 72 hours I'd believed we'd already pieced it all together, the theft, the fake doctor visits, the manipulation. But from the look in his eyes, we had only scratched the surface. I hired a private investigator, he began. Someone who specializes in financial fraud. We traced every transaction, every message, every lie Serena's told for the past 2 years. He opened the folder, revealing printed emails, bank records, phone logs. It started with this, he said, handing me a printout. The email was dated 3 years ago, 6 months before the financial theft began. From Serena. To Marcus Chin, Family Care Coordinator. My hands shook as I read. Marcus, we discussed the elder care situation. C is becoming more isolated and probably won't notice small discrepancies in financial records. She's already showing confusion about bills and prescriptions. L is busy with work and trusts me completely to handle these matters. I think we can proceed with our plan. Let me know what documents you need. Who is Marcus Chin? I whispered. A person who doesn't exist, Landon replied grimly. The email address was created by Serena under a fake name. She was emailing herself to create a fake professional consultation trail. My stomach turned. 3 years ago, I'd been healthier and mostly independent, and yet she'd been planning this long before I needed real help, laying the groundwork to exploit a crisis that hadn't even happened yet. There's more, Landon said, sliding another sheet toward me. She had created an entire fake company, Chin Family Services, complete with a polished website, letterhead, and even fake customer reviews. He showed me screenshots of the site, smiling seniors, glowing testimonials, lists of elder care services. All fabricated to legitimize her role as my care manager. When I started sending money, Landon continued, she sent me reports from this fake business, detailed accounts of your medical visits, grocery deliveries, household help. She included photos she took during her visits, but presented them as proof of services she was supposedly paying for. The memories hit me hard. I could see her standing in my kitchen, snapping pictures of my pill bottles, my refrigerator, even me in my chair. I'd thought she was simply sentimental. The groceries she documented? Landon's tone was bitter. Bought for her own house. The prescriptions? Picked up for her family. Same with the cleaning supplies, the medical equipment, all for herself. It was dizzying. Serena hadn't just taken money, she had built a fake, professional-looking machine to justify it, spending months creating a believable fiction before ever asking for funds. But then Landon's voice dropped. That's not even the worst part. He pulled out another stack, phone logs, text screenshots, email chains. She's been actively cutting you off from people. Making sure you're alone and dependent on her. My blood went cold. What do you mean? Your neighbor, Mrs. Parker, remember her? She tried to invite you to her granddaughter's birthday last year. Did you get that invite? I shook my head. No. I didn't hear about it. Because Serena intercepted it. She emailed Mrs. Parker saying social gatherings were too much for you now. Suggested she avoid inviting you to prevent upsetting you. It was like being punched. Mrs. Parker had been my closest neighbor for over a decade. When she'd suddenly stopped visiting, I thought she'd just moved on. And your cousin Marianne in Oregon? Landon went on. She mailed you a Christmas package. Serena called the shipping company, had it returned, and told Marianne you'd moved without leaving a forwarding address. Then she told her you'd asked not to receive packages because they confused you. I felt the air leave my lungs. Marianne had been one of my last real family ties outside of Landon. When the Christmas cards stopped arriving, when the occasional phone calls dwindled to nothing, I'd told myself my cousin Marianne had simply become busy with her own life. Instead, Serena had deliberately cut off that relationship too. How many people? I asked, barely above a whisper. Landon's face was grim as he flipped through more papers. All of them, Nana. Every friend, every relative, anyone who wasn't under her thumb. She built a deliberate system to isolate you, to make it seem like you were declining mentally and socially. He showed me a meticulous log he'd compiled, dozens of intercepted letters, blocked invitations, packages rerouted, and fake health updates. She made herself your unofficial guardian, Landon continued. Every interaction you had with the outside world was filtered through her. She told people you were developing dementia. Said you were paranoid. Even said you'd become hostile toward visitors. And she painted herself as the loyal daughter-in-law sacrificing everything to care for a difficult old woman. The cruelty of it left me cold. This wasn't just theft. She'd stolen my independence, my friendships, my place in the world, and convinced everyone she was doing it for my benefit. Your doctor's office even has a note in your file, Landon said tightly. 6 months ago, Serena called, claimed she was your official caregiver, and told them you had memory problems. She instructed them to send all appointment info and test results to her, not to you. My stomach dropped. That's why they stopped calling me about visits. I thought it was just efficiency. She intercepted everything, reminders, results, prescription updates. She had complete control over your medical records. I thought back to the confusion I'd felt over medication changes and missed appointments. I'd blamed age, forgetfulness, but it had been deliberate. She was starving me of information to make me more reliant on her. There's one more thing, Landon said. He slid a final document toward me, and my blood ran cold. She contacted Adult Protective Services last month. What? She filed a report about your living conditions and mental health. Claimed you were refusing care, lashing out at family, and showing signs of severe cognitive decline. She requested a welfare check. My hands trembled. But no one came. They did, but they called her first, since she listed herself as the family contact. She told them everything was under control. She sent them fake documentation of the medical care and financial assistance she claimed you were getting. I stared at the report, her description of my life. Subject appears malnourished and confused. Residents in poor condition. Refuses family help and becomes agitated when care is offered. Immediate intervention required. She'd used the hardships her theft created as proof of my supposed decline, then positioned herself as the only one capable of saving me. If you'd ever tried to expose her publicly, Landon said quietly, she could have pointed to this report and had you declared incompetent. The realization struck me like a blow. She was planning to have me committed, I whispered. I think that was her endgame all along, Landon said. Control of your life, your money, indefinitely. I sat in silence for a long time, absorbing the sheer scope of her plan. This wasn't petty greed. This was the slow, methodical dismantling of my entire existence. And then, slowly, something in me shifted. The shock burned away, leaving something colder, harder, and merciless. She made one mistake, I said finally, my voice steady. What's that? She underestimated us. She thought I was weak and you were gullible. She was wrong. Landon's jaw tightened. She has no idea what's coming. No, she didn't. But she was going to find out. Some people, when pushed too far, don't just push back. They burn the whole damn thing down. And Serena had pushed me too far. Planning her downfall would take the same precision she'd used to destroy my life. Over the next 2 weeks, Landon and I became co-conspirators in the most satisfying project I'd worked on in years. We met every day in my cramped kitchen, the table buried under stacks of evidence like a war room. We let her trap herself, Landon said, sketching our plan. No big blow-ups, no emotional scenes. Just a slow tightening of the net until she can't wriggle free. The beauty of it was in the simplicity. We would give Serena exactly what she wanted, total control over my care, and let her weave her lies so tightly they'd strangle her. Phase 1, I said, ticking it off our list. I become the confused old woman she's been describing. It was surprisingly easy to play the part. When she next visited, I greeted her with exaggerated forgetfulness. I asked about conversations we'd supposedly had, then forgot them moments later. I brought up imaginary chats with neighbors I hadn't seen in months. She was delighted. I watched her eyes light up as she pulled out her phone to document my condition with whispered memos. "Claire's much more confused today," she murmured. "Keeps asking about money that doesn't exist. Says she remembers things that never happened. Dementia might be progressing faster than I thought." She sent those updates to Landon immediately, suggesting it was time to start looking at care facilities. Every message was another piece of evidence of her intent. Phase 2, Landon explained during our next strategy session, we ask for more details, force her to invent specifics. He began texting Serena for regular reports on my care. What prescriptions was she managing? Which doctors had I seen lately? What medical equipment had she arranged for? Confident in her lies, Serena provided elaborate answers, complete with details she thought sounded convincing. "The cardiologist wants to increase her beta blockers," she texted him. "The physical therapist says she needs a better walker. I've also arranged weekly in-home blood pressure checks." None of it existed. But every word was now on record. None of it was real, but Serena documented each lie with the poise of someone who'd never been challenged. She was creating an intricate medical history that couldn't be verified because none of it had happened. Meanwhile, I was slowly reading the thread she had worked so hard to cut. Mrs. Parker nearly cried with joy when I called to ask about her granddaughter's birthday party. My cousin Marianne in Oregon was confused but thrilled to hear from me after so long. "I tried to send you a Christmas package last year," she told me during a long, heartfelt phone call, "but it came back with a note saying you'd moved. Serena even called me herself to say you were having memory issues and that packages upset you. She said she was just protecting you. She asked me not to contact you anymore because it might agitate you." Each conversation peeled back another layer of her campaign to isolate me. But instead of feeling crushed, I felt electrified. Every reconnected friendship, every intercepted letter, was another piece of evidence. Phase 3, Landon said as we entered our 3rd week of planning. We let her think she's winning. This part was the hardest on me. I had to sit there and watch Serena speak with mock sadness about my condition while practically glowing at her imagined victory. She brought glossy brochures for assisted living facilities, spoke in soft, pitying tones about my decline, and played the role of the reluctant family member forced into making hard choices. "It's heartbreaking to watch someone you care about fade like this," she told Landon over the phone one afternoon, a call I listened to on speaker, "but we have to face the truth. Claire can't live on her own much longer. She's a danger to herself." She set up tours of memory care units and even contacted an attorney about securing legal guardianship over me, claiming she was the only family member willing to take on the responsibility. We documented every move, every word, every piece of falsified evidence. She was building her own gallows without realizing it. And then, she got greedy. Confident that her lies were airtight, she started taking bigger risks. More of Landon's money went toward flashy purchases, a luxury car, diamond earrings, and a bathroom remodel she claimed was an accessibility upgrade for when I stayed over. I had to renovate the guest bath for Nana's safety, she texted Landon, attaching photos of a $15,000 remodel. I'd never stayed at her home. I'd never even been invited to dinner. She also began casting her net wider, contacting distant relatives and old acquaintances with updates on my health, sprinkling in mentions of how emotionally and financially draining my care was. Claire's situation has become quite challenging, she wrote in one group email. We're doing everything we can to keep her comfortable, but the strain is enormous. Thoughts and prayers are welcome. Some family members even sent money for my care, which, of course, went straight into her own accounts. She's running a full-scale scam now, Landon said, shaking his head as we reviewed the growing pile of proof. And the greedier she gets, the sloppier she becomes. By the end of the third week, we had it all. Bank statements showing thousands in personal spending. Phone logs documenting her interference in my relationships. Medical records proving she hijacked my healthcare communications. Emails revealing her fake businesses and fabricated consultations. And the most damning, recordings of her actively planning my commitment to a memory care facility while siphoning the very money meant to support my independence. Phase 4, I said with grim satisfaction. We closed the trap. The meeting was set for Friday at Landon's office. Serena believed she was coming to finalize arrangements for my transition into assisted living. She had no idea it was going to be her undoing. The night before, I sat in my apartment surrounded by the physical proof of everything she'd stolen, not just the money, but my relationships, my freedom, my dignity. For 2 years, she'd dismantled my life piece by piece, smiling the entire time. Tomorrow, she would find out that when some people are pushed to their limit, they don't just recover, they fight back. I caught my reflection in the window and didn't see the confused, diminished woman she'd tried to turn me into. I saw the sharp, determined woman I'd always been, the one she'd underestimated from the start. She thought she was walking into victory. What she was really walking into was the end of her little empire. Serena arrived 15 minutes early, portfolio in hand, face arranged into the expression of someone about to claim the upper hand. From my seat in the reception area, I watched her smooth her hair and check her lipstick in the elevator reflection. She had no idea I was there. Landon had arranged for us to use the company's glass-walled conference room, sleek, modern, and fully equipped with discreet recording technology. Every word was about to be captured in perfect detail. Mrs. Rivera, thank you for coming, Landon said formally, greeting her at the door. I've asked my grandmother to join us today. I thought it was important she be part of the discussion. The color drained from her face as I stepped in behind him. For a fraction of a second, her mask slipped, pure panic flashing in her eyes, before she rearranged it into her familiar look of forced concern. Claire, sweetheart, I didn't expect you here, she said, her voice just a shade too tight. Are you sure you're up for such a long meeting? I know these things can be exhausting for you. I took the seat across from her, my gaze unwavering. I'm feeling sharper than I have in months, I said evenly. Sharp enough for exactly this kind of meeting. Serena's gaze flicked between Landon and me, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. She could sense the atmosphere had shifted, but she couldn't yet see where the danger lay. Well, that's wonderful, she said with a forced smile. Although, you know, good days can be followed by harder ones. Actually, Landon interrupted, calmly opening his portfolio, let's start by going over some records. Financial records, specifically. He began laying out bank statements in a neat, deliberate row across the table, each page clearly marked, each questionable transfer highlighted in bold yellow. These, Landon said evenly, show every payment I've sent over the last 2 years. A total of $160,000. All of it sent to accounts you control, supposedly for my grandmother's care. Serena's eyes darted from one page to another, her breath coming just a fraction faster. Her fingers twitched toward the papers, trembling slightly. Yes, she said, voice thin but steady. And as you can see, every penny was used for Claire's needs. The medical expenses alone. Which medical expenses, exactly? I asked, my voice calm but sharp as a blade. Her head turned toward me, and for the first time she seemed to notice, really notice, that the frail, confused old woman she'd been spinning her lies around was gone. The cardiology visits, the specialists, your prescriptions, she stammered. Landon slid another set of documents onto the table. These are from Nana's actual doctors. No specialist appointments in over a year. No cardiology consults. No changes to her prescriptions. In fact, her physician's file notes that you blocked them from contacting her directly, preventing proper care. Beads of sweat gathered along Serena's hairline despite the cool air of the conference room. There must be some misunderstanding. I have documentation. You mean this documentation? I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed email exchanges between her and the fictitious Marcuston. The so-called elder care consultant you invented. The website you built out of thin air. The fake references tied to disconnected numbers. The room went utterly silent. For 2 years, Serena had been the gatekeeper of all information, controlling every story, every detail. Now, the real truth sat in front of her in black and white, and she had no prepared script to hide behind. Or maybe you mean this documentation, Landon added, placing another stack on the table, phone logs showing how she'd intercepted my calls and messages, cutting me off from the outside world. Serena's voice came out in a ragged whisper. Claire was confused. I was protecting her from things that would upset her. What condition? I shot back. The one you invented? The dementia you fabricated so you could control every part of my life? I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. For 2 years, you convinced my grandson I was safe and cared for while I was deciding between buying my heart medication or food. You took money meant to keep me alive and used my struggles as proof of your dedication. You stole my connections, my freedom, my dignity, then used my isolation as evidence I was mentally incompetent. I was trying to help, she insisted, her breathing shallow now. The finances were complicated, I was managing things. What I needed, I said, my voice rising for the first time, was the money Landon sent for my care. What I needed was contact with my family. What I needed was control over my own medical information. And you stole all of it while playing the saint. Landon laid down the final piece, the Adult Protective Services report she had filed. This is especially interesting, he said, his tone icy. You painted my grandmother as a vulnerable adult in crisis, then positioned yourself as the hero who could save her. All while pocketing the money that was supposed to keep her independent. Serena's shoulders slumped, her eyes fixed on the report. I was concerned about her well-being, she muttered. No, I said flatly. You were concerned about maintaining control. You needed official paperwork to back up your lies in case anyone questioned you. The air was thick with silence, the kind that comes just before something breaks. Serena's gaze flicked desperately around the room, searching for an escape that didn't exist. The APS caseworker will be very interested in this, Landon said quietly. So will the police. And the district attorney. And every single person you've been collecting sympathy and money from. You can't prove I meant to hurt anyone, she said suddenly, desperation creeping in. I was managing a difficult situation. By stealing over $160,000? I cut in. By inventing medical crises and intercepting my healthcare? By cutting me off from the people who cared about me? I rose to my feet, looking down at her. You didn't just take money. You took 2 years of my life. You turned my own grandson against me by convincing him I was too proud to accept help, while making sure I never saw a cent of it. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not tears of regret, but of panic. I can pay it back, she pleaded. We can keep this, between family. This stopped being a family matter, Landon said coldly, the second you decided to destroy her life for profit. This is criminal. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope. These, I said, spreading the letters across the table, are from everyone you told to stop contacting me, family, friends, neighbors. People you lied to. They'll all be visiting me this weekend, so they can see for themselves how remarkably sharp I am for someone you claimed was in advanced dementia. Serena stared at the letters as the blood drained from her face. She knew her entire facade was about to crumble, in front of every single person she had manipulated. We're not asking, I told her. We're telling you. You'll face charges for elder abuse, financial fraud, and mail tampering. You'll be exposed to every person you've deceived. And you'll lose every dollar you took from me, plus more. I leaned in, meeting her terrified eyes. Most importantly, you're going to learn something today. I'm not the helpless woman you thought I was. And I never will be again. I turned to the camera, my voice calm but deliberate. I'm curious, if you were in my position, what would you have done? Have you ever faced something like this? Let me know in the comments. And while you're here, I've left 2 more stories on the screen, ones this channel's viewers never forget.